Now we bring you Killer Wives, Episode 11, Jealousy. These are the actual case facts of Marquita Sutton, who stabbed her husband to death. Isn't trust a bitch? Laurel, Maryland, famous for its location between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., the headquarters for the National Security Agency, and the murder of one Mr. Johnny Sutton III.
Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant. You have a callback for 86 into Central? Negative K, nothing further. Just see the cabbie in the corner.
Neighbors in the Frostwood Drive community would tell you that from the outside, Johnny and Marquita Sutton appeared to be that happy family. As in most of these cases, from the outside, they do. Their home that Christmas of 2013 was the most decorated exterior on that block. But on the morning of Thursday, December the 12th, the inside of that house would be decorated with the blood of her husband. Johnny Sutton's body was found upstairs in a bedroom with 121 stab wounds. A plastic bag was tied around his head and blankets covered his entire body. She was trying to hide the fact that she had killed her husband. His wife, along with his 21-month-old son, were nowhere to be found, though. Prior to the incident, Johnny told several of his friends that he was inquiring on how to divorce his wife. Apparently, all was not well at the Suttons. But our story begins much earlier in that month of December. The weekend of December 6, 2013 to be exact, when Mr. Sutton told his wife that he was going out of town to New Jersey to take a photography class. He sent his wife this information by email about the event, but didn't provide information about where he was staying at the time. Now, while Johnny was gone, his wife Marquita used an application in her phone to track his cell phone to Ocean City, Maryland. Apparently, Johnny had planned to rendezvous with another woman for a romantic weekend at the Fenwick Inn on Coastal Highway in Ocean City. Angry then, Marquita then rented a car during the late night hours of December the 6th and drove to New Jersey the opposite direction, not returning home to Maryland until the early morning hours of December the 7th. The Easy Pass app and cell phone records recorded her travels. This would come back to haunt her during her inquisition towards the trial. Now later that weekend, records showed Marquita traveled across the Bay Bridge as she attempted to track down her husband. On December the 11th, Marquita told a counselor that her husband had gone away the previous weekend and she believed he was having an affair. She also told a counselor that her husband kept mentioning divorce. That evening, Johnny and his mistress sat alone in his car after work and talked about the future. To her, he said he couldn't wait to introduce her to his friends. But that very same evening, Marquita purchased a 55-gallon black garbage bags from a Laurel Walmart that was not too far by. The bags were later found at the crime scene. She had now mentally set her plans in mind and in motion to kill her husband for his adulterous affair, and would concoct a story after being arrested. Now, if you have watched Killer Wives for the past previous episodes, you have heard me mention a pattern that these wives take in the planning, execution, and cover-up of their husband's murder. And in this case, Miss Marquita follows that pattern after death to a T. She will attempt to besmirch his character, followed by any wife's biggest trump card, that being her husband tried to attack her or rape her. Wait for it, and you'll see. Now, it is widely believed that she killed him later that evening of the 11th or the early morning hours of the 12th. At any rate, on December the 12th, Johnny didn't show up for work. His supervisor received a text message from his phone. Now, since Johnny was dead at that point, that message definitely did not come from him. But from who? That message was believed to have been sent by his wife, Marquita. The message read that he was calling out sick that day because he had to take his son to the hospital. What Marquita never imagined was that Army protocols require direct verbal contact for an absence. The military, unlike civilian life, is not something that you can call into. They must see your physical body. Now, it is a sad fact that many military wives don't either care or are not concerned with their husband's military work etiquette. Further text messages from Johnny's phone said he wasn't able to talk. His direct supervisors continued trying to reach Johnny and Marquita all that day, but weren't able to speak with either. The same day, Marquita also used her dead husband's phone to send a text message to the woman her husband had been seeing, saying his son had picked up the same illness he had contracted early in the week. Think about it. But the woman knew Johnny's early illness was due to food allergy and grew suspicious that the message wasn't coming from Johnny himself. Imagine, a woman that you're cheating around with knows you more than your own wife. Meanwhile, back in Maryland, after work, supervisor of Johnny went to the Suttons' home but found all the lights off. Johnny's car was missing and nobody answering the door. Where was everybody? What had happened? With the military type of dedication, his supervisors waited outside for several hours and continued trying to reach Johnny and Marquita, but couldn't reach either. But I tell you for one thing, thank God for friends like this, because Johnny was already dead inside of that house. And without their concern, he might have laid there dead for days because his wife never returned to that home. She didn't return home that night because she went to Shady Grove Adventist Hospital in Bethesda, roughly 30 miles away from her home, to be treated for 2 lacerations to her hand and a pain in her shoulder, which she dislocated. Now, prosecutors believe that the wounds occurred early that morning as she stabbed her husband to death 121 times. Yes, that was not a mistake. She stabbed him 121 times. In doing so, she also injured herself. I believe she also went to the Bethesda civilian type of hospital to avoid the military hospital on base that was less than 15 minutes drive away from the house. For those of you who've never served time in the military, all military spouses are given top-notch free medical and dental treatment as long as their spouse is on active duty. And Johnny was on active duty. As the sun rose on the following morning, December the 13th, 2013, Sergeant First Class Johnny Sutton again failed to show up for work, and supervisors returned to the home. This time, they were not going to take "he's missing" for an answer. This is due to the fact that if you miss one military daily formation, you are considered AWOL, or in military terms, absent without leave. After arriving and receiving no answer at the door or by phone, they called the police. A property manager arrived after the police and let the officers into the home. Inside, they found what appeared to be a body covered by blankets in the master bedroom. Now, here's where things begin to look very bad. Remember, she stabbed him 121 times. A gruesome scene with dried blood all over, visible on the walls, on the carpet of the room. Under the blankets, officers discovered a body wrapped in trash bags. Homicide detectives arrived thereafter. They slid open that trash bag and determined the body was that of Johnny Sutton. His wife, Marquita, and the couple's 21-month-old son were nowhere to be found, and police made attempts to reach them. Imagine, you have a 21-year-old child in the house while you murder your husband. Missing persons reports were filed for both mother and child. The police feared that maybe whomever did this might have also harmed the remainder of Mr. Sutton's family. But after an exhaustive all-points bulletin search, the police learned that same afternoon that Marquita and the couple's son were safe. Marquita agreed to come in the following day to talk to investigators. While they didn't immediately arrest her for not knowing anything about her husband's whereabouts is beyond me. Now, this is the same woman who rented a car to track her husband down alive. She could care less when he was dead. No calls, no show, didn't get in touch with the police. Now, on the morning of December the 14th, Marquita told the police her husband tried to, like I said, wait for it, sexually assault her during the early morning hours of December the 12th. I believe she had plenty of time to devise an excuse for his murder overnight. And if you remember, I told you before to wait for the excuse and the besmirching of the character ploy. You see, Marquita said after he tried to attack her, she deployed a stun gun against him, but he continued assaulting her. She conveniently left out that he had returned from having sex with another woman and no longer wanted to be married to her, let alone have sex with his own wife. So that was a bad excuse, but she knew detectives did not know this yet. Now, Marquita at that point told police that she retrieved a knife and began stabbing her husband. She said she then dumped evidence in a dumpster at Jerry's Subs and Pizza, which is located in Laurel, Maryland. She then said that she moved her husband's car away from the home. Why? Because she knew the military would come looking for him when he didn't show up for work. Does this sound like a woman who was defending herself? To me, this sounds like premeditated murder. But she didn't know what she was going to do after the fact. Detectives searched the dumpster behind Jerry's Subs and Pizza and found trash bags with numerous bloody items and paperwork from the Sutton household. Johnny's blood was found on several pieces of women's clothing in the bags. Those clothing were her clothing as she got splattered stabbing him. Now, among other items, a hand towel containing Marquita's blood also was found. At that point, police charged Marquita with her husband's murder, which they should have did the moment she was missing. Because mainly in these cases, they know it is the spouse. Now, a subsequent autopsy on Johnny's body revealed 63 stab wounds and 58 cutting wounds spread over his entire body, for a total of 120 stab wounds. One of the wounds chipped Johnny's skull, and another to his face cut a tooth in half. The child was not harmed, as I said, during the incident. This type of killing always represents malice on the spouse's behalf. Police know that in cases like this, a stranger would never go this far, and they have no history or anger towards the person like a spouse would. That's why in the case of O.J. Simpson versus his wife, they always look for the spouse or boyfriend first. Now, Marquita said little during her sentencing except to tell the judge she understood what was happening. Marquita's neighbors say even if she was sexually assaulted as she said she was, killing her husband did her no justice at all. There are places she could have gone, they said, or could have gone to a relative's house. She should have thought about the baby, a neighbor said. Marquita Sutton admitted to investigators she tried to conceal her husband's death. Anne Arundel Circuit Court Judge Ronald A. Silkworth at trial convicted Marquita Sutton of second-degree murder for her husband's death. She entered an Alford plea to the charge, which also allows her to maintain her innocence, but carries the same consequence as guilty plea. Marquita entered an Alford plea to the charge, which allows her to maintain her innocence, but carries the same consequences as a guilty plea. In the case, Alford pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in order to escape a potential death sentence. Now, ordinarily, a guilty plea must include a knowing and intelligent waiver of trial and an admission of guilt. Miss Sutton told police her husband tried to sexually assault her the night she stabbed him to death. Her attorneys have claimed the killing was in self-defense. My friend, if self-defense is 121 stabs, that's a tough defense. The state sought a 30-year sentence, the maximum for second-degree murder. Her sentencing hearing was scheduled for October the 6th through the 8th the following year. Circuit Court Judge Ronald Silkworth sentenced Sutton to 30 years in prison, with all but 10 years suspended. So that means she's getting only 10 years for killing her husband with 120 stabs. The sentence disappointed Johnny Sutton's family, many of whom drove from Florida for each of the 3 sentencing hearings that she had. The hearings began in early October and were continued until late October, then concluded on that Tuesday. Now, to me, that's not enough, said Donna Sutton, Johnny's sister. The couple had their problems, she says, and attended counseling. Family members also knew this. A prosecutor said Johnny talked about divorcing Marquita and was seeing another woman at the time of his death, or should I say, at the time that his wife murdered him. There were even allegations of abuse. Now, I'm not condoning that, but that doesn't mean she should take his life, Diana Sutton said. Now, Johnny was one of 7 children from Miami, Florida, where he graduated from school in 1994. Diana Sutton said, so, it's amazing. He was a very fun person to be around, she said. Everybody liked him when he was around. He made sure everybody was happy. And in a lot of these cases I bring you guys, these stories follow each other to the letter. One demonic spouse that wants to kill you, and one person that everybody doesn't know why did you kill this person. She said he was basically the life of the party. Johnny went to the Army shortly after graduating high school. He came back from boot camp and brought his sister a teddy bear. She said, we were very close growing up. Over the next 2 decades, Johnny served overseas, working in places like Iraq, Korea, and Germany, to name a few. His family said, now, he had a son, now in his teens, and was stationed at Fort George Meade on 2 occasions. Now, Fort George Meade is the post for the NSA. He was a system analyst. He worked as a program analyst for the Army in total. It was while Johnny was in Germany that he met his wife, Marquita, who would later kill him. The couple eventually married and had a son together. A week before Johnny died, he spoke with his mom, Cynthia Taylor. He wanted her to come live with him, she said. The pair went on trips together. He took her to Germany, Niagara Falls, and Atlantic City, among other places, she said. She says, my son was a family man. A lot of people called him a mama's boy, which is fine with me because he loved his mama, she said. Taylor says she often spoke with her son and Marquita on the phone. So she did not just deal with her son, she dealt with his wife as well. She told both of them that if they were having any trouble, to give her a call. And mothers do this. She said, I treated her like a daughter, not a daughter-in-law. It didn't make any sense, she said, for her to do this. So, I'd like you guys to join us next week for another edition of Killer Wives. And maybe you can figure out how these cases start and why they should finish. This is Charles Rivers for Killer Wives. We'll see you again next week.